What if I told you that deep within the golden realm of Lothlórien, beneath the shadow of Mallen trees, two of Middle-earth's most mysterious beings once shared a conversation that could have changed the fate of the Third Age forever? This isn't about armies clashing or rings being forged. This is about a meeting so secret, so carefully hidden in the spaces between Tolkien's words that most readers walk right past it without ever knowing it happened. Today we're diving into the untold encounter between Tom Bombadil and Galadriel, a meeting that explains mysteries you never even knew existed. And it all starts with a question nobody's asking. Why did the most powerful elf in Middle-earth never once mention the oldest being alive? Think about what we know. Galadriel has lived for thousands of years, witnessed the creation of the Rings of Power, stood against Sauron in multiple ages, and possesses one of the 3 elven rings. She sees into hearts, reads the threads of fate, and knows the deep history of Middle-earth better than almost anyone still walking its paths. Yet when the Fellowship arrives in Lothlórien, when she tests each member and peers into their souls, she never once speaks of Tom Bombadil. Not a word, not even a hint. That's not an oversight. That's deliberate silence. And in Tolkien's world, when someone with Galadriel's wisdom stays quiet about something, it usually means that something is too important to speak of lightly. But here's where it gets really interesting. During the Council of Elrond, when the fate of the ring is being debated, Gandalf mentions Tom Bombadil as a possible guardian. The idea is quickly dismissed because Tom doesn't care about such things, and his power doesn't extend beyond his borders. But Galadriel isn't at that council. She's in Lothlórien, maintaining the protection of her realm with Nenya, her ring of power. Yet somehow, through her mirror, or through the network of communication between the wise, she knows exactly what transpired there. So why doesn't she object? Why doesn't she send word that Tom might be more important than they realize? Unless she already knows something about him that the others don't. Something she learned through direct contact. It's pieced together when this meeting could have occurred. The time frame has to be precise. It couldn't have been too recent, or there would be traces in the immediate memory of the Fellowship's journey. It couldn't have been too ancient because Galadriel's current understanding of the ring's power and Sauron's return suggests recent knowledge. This points to a window somewhere in the early Third Age, perhaps during the period when the Nazgul first began stirring, but before their power fully manifested. This timing makes perfect sense. As the shadow grew in the east and strange reports began filtering westward, Galadriel would have sought to understand these new threats. Her ring gives her foresight, but even that has limits. She would need intelligence, context, perhaps even guidance from someone whose memory stretches back to the very foundations of the world. Enter Tom Bombadil, the one being in Middle-earth who predates even her own ancient lineage. But how would such a meeting happen? Tom famously never leaves his boundaries. He doesn't travel, doesn't journey, doesn't venture beyond the old forest and the Barrow Downs. But that's established fact. Except what if that's not entirely true? What if Tom's boundaries aren't as fixed as everyone believes? Here's something most people miss. Tom's power isn't just over his forest, it's over the concept of boundaries themselves. When he leads the hobbits out of the Barrow Downs, the landscape seems to shift around him. Paths appear where none existed before. Distances compress and expand according to his will. This isn't just local magic, this is reality warping at a fundamental level. So what if, just once, for reasons important enough to justify it, Tom stepped outside his usual domain? Not permanently, not obviously, but through the kind of subtle manipulation of space and time that someone of his nature could achieve. A temporary expansion of his boundaries, a brief extension of his influence, allowing him to walk paths that don't appear on any map. The meeting place would have been crucial. Somewhere neutral, somewhere both could reach without compromising their essential natures. And there's one location that fits perfectly: the ancient ruins near the Mythithal, the old crossing places where the roads from Rivendell meet the paths leading south to Lothlórien. These crossroads have deep significance in Middle-earth. They're places where different realms touch, where the borders between territories become fluid. In the First Age, they were sites of alliance and treaty. In the Second Age, they were watched by the forces of Gil-galad and Elendil. By the early Third Age, they were forgotten by most, but their power remained. Picture this scene: a moonless night, stars hidden by clouds at a weathered stone bridge that once carried the traffic of kingdoms. Galadriel arrives first, having travelled in secret from her realm, perhaps invisible to all eyes, save those trained to see beyond the visible world. She doesn't know exactly who she's come to meet, only that the winds and waters have whispered of one who might hold answers to questions that plague her sleep. Then, with no sound of approach, Tom Bombadil simply stands there, as if he'd been part of the landscape all along. No grand entrance, no display of power, just presence, undeniable and impossible to ignore. For a moment, neither speaks. Two immortals, each ancient beyond mortal understanding, recognizing something in the other that few beings in Middle-earth could comprehend. The conversation that follows isn't recorded in any book, preserved in any archive, or remembered in any song, but we can piece together its essence from the actions and decisions that come afterward. Galadriel would have asked about the shadow growing in the east. Tom would have spoken of older shadows, older cycles, patterns that repeat across ages with subtle variations. She would have inquired about the Nazgul. He would have hummed something about borrowed time and borrowed power, rings that bind and souls that fade. But the heart of their meeting would have centered on a single, crucial question. What is Tom Bombadil's true nature, and why does his existence matter to the fate of Middle-earth? Here's where Tolkien's deeper mythology becomes essential. Tom isn't just old, he's foundational. He represents something that existed before the music of creation took its final form, a principle of being that operates outside the normal rules that govern everything else. He's not bound by the power of the rings, because he existed before the concept of binding itself was fully established. Galadriel, with her deep understanding of the rings of power and their influence, would have grasped this immediately. But she would have also understood its implications. If Tom exists outside the normal order, then his choices carry weight beyond their apparent scope. His decision to remain uninvolved isn't just personal preference, it's a cosmic statement about the nature of free will and intervention. This explains why Galadriel never mentions him afterward. It's not that she doesn't trust him or doesn't value his power, it's that she understands, after their conversation, that Tom's role is to remain apart. His very existence serves as a guarantee that no single force, no matter how powerful, can claim dominion over everything. He's Middle-earth's ultimate failsafe, but only as long as he remains neutral. During their meeting, Tom would have shared insights that helped Galadriel understand the true nature of Sauron's return and the ring's power. Not tactical information, but deeper truths about the cyclical nature of evil and the importance of hope and resistance. In return, Galadriel would have offered her own wisdom about the Elves' fading time in Middle-earth and the approaching dominion of men. But the most significant part of their conversation would have been about choice itself. Tom represents absolute freedom, the power to choose without constraint. Galadriel represents wisdom gained through suffering, the hard-won knowledge of when to act and when to refrain from action. Together they would have explored the paradox of power, that sometimes the greatest strength lies in knowing when not to use it. This understanding becomes crucial when we examine Galadriel's behavior during the War of the Ring. Her refusal of the ring when Frodo offers it to her, her careful balance between helping the Fellowship and not overwhelming them with her power, her decision to pass into the West rather than remaining to rule a diminished Middle-earth. All of these choices echo the wisdom she would have gained from speaking with Tom. Consider how she handles the mirror of Galadriel. She shows Sam and Frodo visions of possible futures, but she doesn't interpret them or try to force particular actions. She presents knowledge and allows them to choose how to respond. This approach mirrors Tom's relationship with the hobbits in his forest. He helps them when they're in immediate danger, but he doesn't try to guide their larger journey. The meeting would also explain certain mysteries about the geography of Middle-earth during the Third Age. Why do the borders between realms remain relatively stable despite the growing shadow? Why do some ancient places retain their power while others fade? The answer might lie in agreements reached between the great guardians of Middle-earth, understandings that preserve the balance between preservation and change. Tom's influence on this balance would be subtle but crucial. His realm serves as a fixed point around which other changes can occur without threatening the fundamental stability of the world. Galadriel's Lothlórien, protected by her ring, serves a similar function. Together they create anchor points that allow the age to transition naturally rather than catastrophically. This also illuminates why both Tom and Galadriel seem to operate with knowledge that goes beyond what they directly observe. Tom knows things about the ring and its bearers that he shouldn't logically know. Galadriel sees patterns in her mirror that suggest understanding of connections across vast distances and times. If they shared information and insights during their secret meeting, both would have gained perspective that enhanced their natural abilities. The timing of their meeting becomes even more significant when we consider the broader sweep of the Third Age. This wasn't just about gathering intelligence on current threats. It was about preparing for an age of transition, a time when the elder powers would fade and the dominion of Middle-earth would pass to younger races. Both Tom and Galadriel understand that their time of direct influence is ending. Tom will remain in his forest, but his impact will become increasingly local. Galadriel will eventually sail into the west, leaving Middle-earth forever. But their meeting allows them to coordinate their final contributions to the world's fate. This coordination explains many seeming coincidences in the later events of the War of the Ring. Why does Tom appear exactly when the hobbits need him in the Old Forest and the Barrow Downs? Why does Galadriel's gift of light to Frodo prove crucial in the darkest places of his journey? These aren't random acts of kindness, they're precisely calibrated interventions designed to provide just enough help without overwhelming the natural development of events. The secret nature of their meeting also makes perfect sense within the context of Middle-earth's politics. If other powers knew that Tom and Galadriel had spoken, it would raise questions about other possible alliances and communications. The White Council, the various kingdoms of men, even Sauron himself might react in ways that could destabilize the careful balance that both Tom and Galadriel work to maintain. By keeping their meeting secret, they preserve the appearance that each operates independently, while actually ensuring that their actions complement rather than conflict with each other. This hidden coordination becomes a crucial element in the ultimate success of the quest to destroy the ring. But perhaps the most profound aspect of their meeting lies in what it reveals about the nature of wisdom itself in Tolkien's world. Both Tom and Galadriel possess power that could easily overwhelm lesser beings, yet both choose restraint. Their conversation would have reinforced this shared understanding that true wisdom often manifests as knowing when not to act. This principle becomes especially important when we consider how their meeting influences their interactions with the ring-bearer. Neither Tom nor Galadriel tries to take the ring for themselves, despite having the power to do so. Neither tries to direct Frodo's path too explicitly, despite having the knowledge to do so. Instead, both offer help that preserves Frodo's agency while supporting his ultimate success. The hidden encounter between Tom Bombadil and Galadriel represents more than just a meeting between powerful beings. It symbolizes the kind of quiet wisdom that often shapes the fate of worlds, not through dramatic gestures or overwhelming force, but through careful understanding and perfectly timed restraint. In the end, their secret meeting matters not because of what they decided to do, but because of what they chose not to do. By establishing their mutual understanding and respect, they created a framework that allowed the events of the War of the Ring to unfold according to their natural course, guided by hope and courage rather than dominated by power. This hidden story within the larger story reminds us that in Middle-earth, as in our own world, the most important conversations often happen in silence, and the most crucial decisions are made by those wise enough to know when their time for action has passed. So the next time you read about Tom Bombadil's cheerful indifference to the great events of his time, or Galadriel's mysterious knowledge of things she shouldn't know, remember that sometimes the deepest truths are found not in what is written, but in the spaces between words, where the wisest voices whisper their most important secrets.